Shay here, and today we are here to film my most recent wrap-up. If you want to know what I read in kind of the first half of February, including the manga love stuff, I will leave that video linked in the corner for you. But we are here to talk about what I've read since then. So I'm going to start with the manga because I only have, I think, 3 volumes of manga to talk about. And then I've got a stack of comic bind-ups, so we're going to talk about those after that, and then we'll dive into the books. So let's get into this. First up, we've got Golden Japanesque. And this is volume 1. In Golden Japanesque, we have a young woman named Maria. Maria's father was obviously a foreigner. And because of that, her mother's kind of browbeat her entire life. And so she doesn't really have any self-worth. So in this story, we have a boy that stumbles across her, doesn't understand why she keeps her head down, and she has always put temporary dye in her hair and doesn't look at people because of her bright eye color, and she has blonde hair, like a strawberry blonde kind of thing. And so when she falls in the water and he sees her true coloring, he's like, why do you hide yourself? Be yourself, be your beautiful self. He finds her very pretty. And so I have a feeling this is going to be kind of a journey of self-love for her. This does involve heavy bullying, so do just know that before you enter this story, because I was a little taken aback by it because I wasn't prepared for that, so I feel like I need to prepare other people for that. But I genuinely enjoy it. I love the art style a whole lot. It is really, really pretty and really fun, and I am really excited to continue this when the next volume comes out. And then we have the wildness that is Something is Wrong with Us. Something's Wrong with Us, volume 5. Wow. The last panel of this volume made me say, what the literal F? I texted my friend Melissa over at Melissa Reads. I will leave her linked down below. But I was just like, what the actual F? What's going on? I am so confused. And she's like, right? So we're both in the same place with this. Anyways, this is a romantic suspense, essentially, where this woman comes back to get revenge on her childhood crush because he framed her mother for murder. And it's so good. I love this so much. The art, as always, is absolutely just stunning. And she knows exactly who he is. He has ideas as to who she is. And so it's just really interesting. And I'm really excited to see how this one continues. Last up for the manga is Night of the Ice, volume 1. Not volume 1, volume 5. I continue to love how this series grows and progresses because we have both of our characters moving forward, whether that's together or not. They both continue to grow into the people that they want to become. And I really love it a whole lot. We see Kokoro struggling with the fact that Chitose is kind of not feeling like they're actually in a relationship, and so she calls him on it, and they basically end things for the time being. And so they're both evaluating what their relationship actually means to them, and it's such a good volume. We're at about the halfway point of the series, so I'm really looking forward to how it goes from here. Now moving on to the comic bind-ups. The first one I've got here is The Wicked and the Divine, volume 1. They call this the Faust Act, and wow, this is kind of wild and a little bit messy, but I kind of like it for it. The art is absolutely fantastic. Just so good. And basically every 90 years, 12 gods return as young people. They are loved, they are hated. In 2 years' time, they all end up dead. And it's happening again, and it's happening now. Kind of a situation. This series was really popular when I first entered the booktube space, and then I haven't heard anybody talk about it for a long time. I really did enjoy this first volume, and I'm looking forward to continuing. I have recently acquired the second volume. You'll see that outing in a future video, but I am very excited to continue. Next up, we have the Q Conflict, which is a Star Trek comic. Basically, this is someone's fanfic idea to dream cast their own squads, I guess you could say, from popular Star Trek franchises. So we have the original series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager all tied in to this conflict with Q. Now, essentially what it did is you don't even really get that much Q. It's more focused on these fan cast groups of people from all the different generations. And so it's not my favorite. I wanted a little more Q out of this volume, if I'm honest. And the Q that we got on page is just not John DeLance. And or Delancey, I never know how you say his name, but it just wasn't the same for me. And so I ended up giving this one 3 stars. It's not bad. And if you're a Trek fan, you will probably enjoy it, but it was kind of a miss. I'm a little bit sad about it. And then last for the comics here, we have Alex and Ada volumes 2 and 3, which does conclude the series. So in this series, we're dealing with someone who is gifted an AI who has the capability of becoming sentient. He makes a choice to unlock her, essentially. And it's about them and their relationship and the choices and consequences that they make throughout their time together. It's really interesting. I found this to be an interesting discussion, and it's one that happens in sci-fi fairly often. You know, I gave this one 4.5 stars and this one 4 stars. I do feel some things at the end were a little bit convenient, but at the same time, I do like that there were harsh and severe consequences for the choices that were made throughout the course of the series. And I recommend Alex and Ada. I think it was a good time. And I look forward to like rereading it all straight through sometime. I read these 2 together, and I wish I would have reread volume 1 before I dove into these, but it was still really solid and I really enjoyed it. Now let's move on to the books. First up for the books, we have a poetry collection, and that is Shine Your Icy Crown by Amanda Lovelace. Now, I have read all 5 of Amanda Lovelace's collections that she's come out with so far, and I've enjoyed 4 of the 5. So I think she's kind of an auto-buy poetry collection person for me. I tend to really relate with the topics that she brings up in her collections. This one is very much about empowering yourself outside of like a romantic relationship or the relationship you have with your family. This is just about self-love and empowering yourself throughout your life. And it was really well done. The art throughout it is absolutely beautiful, and I highly recommend checking this out because it is very empowering, and I just really enjoyed it. I know poetry isn't for everybody, but this particular collection really hit a good spot for me. Next, we have a buddy read that I did with Lindsay over at Lindsay Tutt, and that is, again, The Magic by Lisa Kleypas. Now, I know a lot of people are like diehard lovers of this series. Now, for this one, I'm giving it a 4 star. There are some things that I didn't really get along with for a good chunk of the story, like our main couple. I didn't really love as much as some other people do. So I ended up giving this 4 stars. I do think it was brilliantly written, and I thought it was very well thought out, and I really applaud Lisa Kleypas for this. But I didn't fall head over heels for our heroes really at all. The secondary couple tended to be my favorite because we're dealing with 2 sisters and their romances, essentially. I almost wish they would have had their books separated because I think that would have helped the story, but at the same time, the initial couple are the ones that I was struggling with the most. So maybe a book about just them wouldn't have done as well, and that's why it was kind of this bind-up situation instead. So with that said, I did enjoy this. I gave it a solid 4. Not a brand new favorite for me, but it's not going to stop me from trying Lisa Kleypas books. Next, we have An Unexpected Earl. In this one, we have 2 childhood friends who get reacquainted. And what happens is they were separated 12 years ago, kind of persuasion style. He's become a made man. He's back home. He's inherited this piece of land right next to hers. And so now it's all about this doesn't focus so much on the relationship as it does the political maneuverings of like her brother and the hero and some things like that. So the romance kind of took a back seat in this one. So I didn't enjoy it as much as I wanted to. I did give it 3.5. I do think it was well written. So I will be trying more Anna Harrington's, and I might try the other book in this series to see if it lands any better for me. But this one, it just felt like it needed a little less plot, a little more romance, which I say very rarely, but when you go into something like this, you expect a little more of the romance, and I didn't quite get that with this one. Next, we have Dream a Little Dream by Melinda Curtis. This is a really great second chance romance. So we have people who dated for a really long time. They were high school sweethearts, and they ended up breaking up a couple years back. And he came back to town after some time out on the road, and she's married to an older gentleman who happens to be the judge around the area. Basically what happens is he ends up setting her up to become the next judge of the area because he doesn't trust his own children. And after he passes away, she inherits, at least for a short term, the judgeship. And so now that she's there, this guy who she was dating a long time ago is bound and determined to win her back. He does a good grovel. We really like him. He really goes out of his way to make sure that she knows how intentional he is with what he wants with her. It's beautiful. I really enjoyed this. Solid 4.5 stars. If you have not tried Melinda Curtis's writing, I highly recommend that you do, because the way she writes contemporary just is so engaging to me, and I've really enjoyed all 3 books that I've read by her so far. Next, we have a book that's technically out on the 2nd. I think you guys will see this the 3rd, so it's out a little early for me. And that is Accidentally Engaged by Farah Heron. So basically on the back, I'm going to say all is fair in love and baking. So essentially it's about these 2 people who live near each other. It's like baking wars, fake marriage, fake engagement, kind of a thing. Like, it's so good. I believe the heroine, Rena, she refuses to marry anyone who works for her father. And she's attracted to this guy, Nadim, and I believe he does work for her father, if I remember right. And it's really sweet. I really enjoyed this, and it made me so hungry as I was reading it. So definitely check this one out if you like cooking in your romances. Next up on the list is the autobiography of Catherine Janeway. Yes, I'm holding up a physical copy of this, but I actually listened to it via audiobook because it is narrated by Kate Mulgrew, who was the actress who played Catherine Janeway. And I honestly don't think it would have been nearly as enjoyable just physically reading it for me, though it does have some fantastic pictures throughout it. Like, it's really a lot of fun, but I honestly think that it's best listened to because she narrates it so well. You just feel like you're sitting in the same room as Captain Janeway and listening to her talk about her life. And it's brilliantly done. I really enjoyed this. If you're a Trek fan or a Voyager fan at all, I do think this is worth picking up the audiobook for. And then you can pick up the physical one, obviously, if you want. I still like having it for my shelf, but, you know, it's one of those things where if I'm going to revisit it, I'm probably just going to re-listen to the audiobook if I'm honest with myself, because the audio on this is fantastic. So highly recommend the audiobook for this one. Next, we have this beast of A Court of Silver Flames. I did do a dedicated reading vlog for this, so I will leave that linked in the corner. Just know that I gave this 5 stars. I know it's not a perfect book, but my enjoyment level was so high that it balanced out the problems that I had with it. The subplot was a little rough for me, but I think that's a personal thing. There are a lot of people who really loved that, and I adore Nesta, and I know some people didn't. So anyways, I really enjoyed my journey with this book. If you want to see the whole thing, check that out in the corner. Next, we have A Vow So Bold and Deadly by Bridget Kemmerer. This is the 3rd book in the Cursebreakers series. I'm not sure if it's the final one. I'm not sure she's going to keep going. I would love for her to play in this world some more. I ended up giving this 4.5 stars. This was our Tell It Again pick for February. I believe our live show linked in the corner, where April and I spoil everything and basically fangirl about this book. We both really enjoyed it. It wasn't exactly perfect. There were some things within the ending of this book that were a little convenient that, you know, and then hormones, because we're dealing with YA. And there is just some timing things that didn't feel quite right, I guess is the easiest way to put this. But anyways, we talk more in depth about it in the live show, so I will leave that linked if you want all our spoilery thoughts. Next, we have How the King of Elfheim Learned to Hate Stories by Holly Black. This is basically kind of like a fairy tale way to learn about Cardan and his life, told through fairy tales he was told and just through little life experiences that he had. It's brilliant. The person who illustrated this, Rovina Kai, should have their name just as big as Holly Black's, because I don't think this book would be nearly as strong without its beautiful illustrations. Like, it is stunning. Definitely check this out. All right, let's dive into everything else that was digital. So first up, we have Hit Me With Your Best Scott. I think I technically read this in the previous part, but I'm not sure I mentioned it in the wrap-up, so I'm going to mention it here. This is a really sweet historical about this brood of a man whose mother is obligating him to get married, or at least engaged, before his sister gets married, and he ends up falling for this actress. It's really cute. I really, really liked it. And I think it's just a really fun time. If you like a Scottish broody hero, this is definitely the kind of historical for you. I ended up giving it 4 stars, but I keep thinking about it, so I might bump it up to 4.5 at least. But I really enjoyed it. Highly recommend. Next, we have A Wolf After My Own Heart. I actually DNF'd this book. The writing was so chaotic and I could not keep up with what was going on. I was so lost. I gave it like 15% and I still didn't understand anything. So it was just one of those things where it was a me problem, not the book problem, probably. And I ended up DNFing this book. It was not for me. Next up on the list, we have Hero Wanted. I think this is by Bettina Kron or Karn. I don't remember how you say her last name. But in this one, we have kind of an arranged marriage gone wrong situation. But again, kind of like an Unexpected Earl, it focuses more on like the political ramifications of their relationship and why they have to get married. And they end up kind of like shipwrecked in a way and some things like that. And I wanted a little bit more of the romance in the relationship and a little less of the politics. So again, I ended up giving this one 3 stars. I liked the writing enough that I do want to try more by this author, but this particular one was just kind of a miss for me. Next up, we have the complete Highland Magic collection by Kerrigan Byrne. I listened to all 9 novellas via audio, and I ended up really enjoying each and every one of them. I'm just reviewing them as one because I think it's better to enjoy them as a collection rather than read them individually. So I did not review them individually, so I just did them as the collection. And it's really fun. You're dealing with berserker lore and banshees and druids. Like, it's just a lot of fun dealing with kind of Celtic lore and Vikings and all sorts of fun things like that. So I highly recommend listening to them, especially if you like Derek Perkins as a narrator. If you're not a huge Derek Perkins fan, you might not enjoy this one as much as I did, but I really enjoyed the audio for it. And I know that you can get the ebook of it pretty cheap, like the entire collection. So I do recommend checking them out because they were a lot of fun. The next 2 I'm going to talk about together because they are Haven and Sanctuary, Book 1 and Book 2 in the Beards and Bondage series by Rebecca Weatherspoon. These were fantastic. I gave them both 4.5 stars. They weren't quite perfect for me. They didn't quite get that 5, but they were still thoroughly enjoyable. I really enjoyed it. In one of them, we have this mountain man who's a dom who like goes to LA once a year to kind of let things out BDSM style. He has an agreement with a submissive, and that's how he does that. And he basically ends up saving this woman from being like captive, like being held captive and murdered. These guys ended up murdering her brother, and it's really interesting because like she already liked rough sex, but she comes to him later knowing that she's like, I need to be choked. She's very specific with what she needs. And he's like, oh my gosh, this is like my dream woman. And so they explore like the sexual things that they need while also trying to get to know each other better and explore a romantic side. The way time is used in this particular one with Haven was fantastic. Highly recommend. And I really like the series. Moving on to Sanctuary. With Sanctuary, I did end up enjoying this a whole lot. We kind of have things flipped where we have a female dominatrix. She did this to kind of put herself through college, through law school, and from there, she basically, things went wrong with one of her clients, and he sent someone to kill her. She ends up killing him. She's really kind of a bad A. Like, she totally stabs him in the neck with her stiletto. And I was just like, yes, queen, we love to see it. But after that, she kind of has a hard time getting her footing, and one of her friends basically tells her, go, like, I'm going to take you somewhere safe. And it ends up being a farm that he and his brother technically own, his twin brother, but he's kind of like drawn the line and they don't really have much of a relationship anymore. And he's kind of his name is Silas. He's very curmudgeon-y, but he talks about at some point in the novel that he thinks he's on the spectrum, but he's never talked to anybody about it outside of our heroine. And it's really fantastic. I really, really loved it. I highly recommend checking out the series. I will be reading Harbor very, very soon. I already have it on my Kindle. I just need to set aside some time to read it. And then the last one we're going to talk about is The Blue Stocking Duchess. This one, it's just one of those things where it was kind of forgettable. Like, I don't even remember the characters' names. And it was just a fun little historical. It didn't do anything wrong. I ended up giving it 3 stars. It was just kind of forgettable. Like, you know, nothing exciting or unexpected happened in it. So it just kind of once I read it, it was like, well, there goes. So that one was not a huge win for me, but it didn't necessarily do anything wrong, which is why it got 3 stars. So with that said, that is the entirety of this video. I hope with all my heart you guys enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments down below what you've read in the last couple weeks, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.